peaceful and beautiful and physical and angry all at the same time.
Were you idiot, your mind would cave in and your heart would explode within your chest.
This is going to be a shame.
Here we go!
Hello, everybody. Welcome inside a brand new edition of the Tall Can Audio Podcast. Matt Robinson coming to you from the TCA studio here in beautiful Bytown, Canada, where it remains, well, cold and damp. Still got another dumping of snow here the other day, but people seem walking around with a little bit of pep in their step. I don't know what that's all about. I suppose it could have something to do with the fact that on Tuesday night, the Ottawa Senators clinched a playoff spot for the first time since 2017, or to be fair, had someone clinch it for them. I can't imagine, though, that anyone cares about that. So we'll be talking baseball here. We're going to be joined by our friend Dan Shulman, the voice of the Toronto Blue Jays, guy we get to talk to a couple times a year, see what's going on in his world, talk a little baseball, all that kind of good stuff. Dan's always been very kind with his time, and we appreciate him jumping on the show. And I guess one thing I would point out before we get to Dan, as I remind you, we are on social media at Tall Can Audio and would love to hear from you there. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast wherever you're hearing us right now. Spotify, Google Audio, Apple Podcasts, wherever you are, there's a follow or a subscribe button. Go ahead, hit that. Stick around. We're going to keep plenty of good stuff coming for you throughout the baseball season, the hockey playoffs, everything that we got going on right now. And I am a little surprised that, you know, on Sen's Twitter, not seeing a whole lot of gratitude towards Brendan Gallagher, who was the one who scored the empty net goal for the Montreal Canadiens to win their game last night, which was actually the final thing that put the Senators into the playoffs. Sens couldn't do it themselves, needed a little help, of course. I would have thought maybe there'd be a little bit more thank you, Mr. Gallagher, for doing what we could not do ourselves. I thought, I know how much Sens fans love Brendan Gallagher, but I was sure they would look beyond that and really wrap their arms around and embrace him and the Montreal Canadiens. But so far, at least on my timeline, no sign of such gratitude, which is a little strange, I would have thought. This is a morning recording of the episode, so no pint today. Well, can't say that. Can't say there won't be a pint today, but there won't be one during this recording of the podcast. Obviously, Dan's got to be at the ballpark during the afternoon, calls the games in the evening, so we're touching base in the morning. And so in the interest of, trying to keep things under a little bit of control around here, we will neglect to have a beer on this edition of the podcast. But with all that out of the way, let's get right into it here. We touch base with our friend, the voice of the Toronto Blue Jays, Dan Shulman, who is out of the comforts of the Dome and has passed through New York and Boston here in the last couple days. How are you doing, Dan? Does it feel like baseball season out there?
No, it's it's like pretty frigid football weather, to be honest with you. And Buck and I have actually done something the last couple of days that we never do. We kept the windows closed here in Boston.
Oh, wow.
We had them. Yeah, we haven't advertised that, but there's a scoop for you right here. But we didn't in New York. But I mean, it's really cold. It was like -2 Celsius. It was during the game last night. So we don't like doing it. We like to be able to hear and feel the ballpark, and Fenway's got a lot of feels to it, although the crowds have been tiny because of the weather. And I can't blame them. Like, it's freezing. I give the players a ton of credit for the way that they've been able to go out there and do their thing in these conditions. So, we're having fun as we always do. Love doing games day after day. Blue Jays have had a couple of good days in Boston, so it's all good.
Yeah, they're at the time you and I speak, it says it's 0 degrees in Boston, Massachusetts, Celsius, so hardly baseball weather. But the Jays have won 2 in a row, and they got the Vladdy thing done, they got the Kirk thing done. I think a lot of people are feeling pretty good about the team, and we'll get to some of that here in a second. But Dan, if you don't mind, I'd like to take you back in time to last summer for a minute or two here, and ask you about your experience at the Olympic Games. And there was a nice piece, I believe it was in... you'll correct me if I'm wrong, maybe the Star, maybe it was the Athletic, that had sort of talked about this opportunity had it ever popped up for you that you would like to go and call men's basketball for Canada at the Olympics, should they ever get there. And it was a bit of a journey. It was a bit of a wait for them to get there. But, a lot of people may not know that not every play-by-play team doing Olympic sports goes to Paris or goes to Tokyo. A lot of it happens here in Toronto. How did the opportunity present itself, and how did you end up being one of the lucky ones who got to go?
So, it was in the Toronto Star. It was Gregor Chisholm who wrote a very nice article about it. And Gregor and I know each other well, and he knew that this had kind of been a bucket list thing for me for many, many years. I actually did it at the Tokyo Olympics as well, but did it remotely. So, but I think because maybe the men weren't there and the time change, even close friends of mine are like, "Oh, really? You did that?" And they don't even remember. So, but Paris was different because we did go. And you're right. A lot of sports are now done remotely. COVID kind of forced people to figure out how to do these things. And for a lot of networks in a lot of countries and a lot of sports, this is the kind of thing that's being done. But I think because there was so much interest around the Canadian basketball program, they decided to send us to Paris, and it was great. So, I've done quite a bit of Canada basketball stuff over the years, some of the qualifiers, some of the Americas things, that sort of thing. So it's always been something that I've wanted to do and had a great time. Unfortunately, the men didn't get as far as we wanted them to go. The women didn't win a game. And I, not that I thought the women's team was a medal contender, but I thought they would do a little bit better than that. So, but it was a terrific experience. I'd never been to France before. It's the second Olympics I had been to. No, nobody remembers this, but me and a couple of other people, but I actually did hockey in Lillehammer in 1994 for CTV. So, but it was really cool. It was a fun experience.
I'm sort of curious what your takeaway was from the experience from a Canadian men's team perspective. You mentioned that they didn't go as far as we wanted. I thought the tournament itself was really fun. It was cool to sit down and watch some of the tight games they had played through the round robin. And then I guess it's just one of those funny rules that can happen in international sport that you're not supposed to play in the quarters someone that was in your own pool. And so all of a sudden, instead of getting the matchup you thought you'd earned, you're getting host France in Paris in front of that crowd, a very good team with a young superstar and some a lot of international experience, a team that goes on to win a silver medal at the Olympics. A bit of a sour taste in my mouth in that regard, just how that played out at the end. But overall, the experience of watching it, I thought was a lot of fun. What was did they look ready to you? Did they look like they had come together the way you thought they would? And moving forward, where is this Canadian men's program?
Right. Well, the one thing that I always say is, and I'm not saying you, but people who don't, people who watch the NBA and then they say, oh, look, there's 11 NBA players on this team. They should be the second best team after the United States. It just doesn't work that way. Right. It just never works that way. And there are tremendous players playing around the planet who might not be in the NBA, but they might be just as good as, say the back half of the Canada roster, or their skill set might fit their particular team and structure and style better than maybe some of the other teams fit. Or they've played together for years and years and years, and they know each other very well and that sort of thing. So FIBA basketball is a different animal. I've done a fair bit of it, as I said, and I tend to watch a fair bit of it, and it's just a different animal. And yeah, luck of the draw, who you get. I mean, the 3 games that Canada played in their group, which was kind of called the group of death, they were all really, really good teams and really close games. Like Canada didn't blow out anybody in those games. And I didn't think in the round robin portion they played particularly well. I thought they played just well enough to win the games. I'm trying to remember. It was Spain, it was Greece, and it was Australia, I believe. We're in their group, right? So they were all close, and any of the teams could have finished first. Any of the teams could have finished fourth in that pool. Then they get out, and now I think they were the 3 seed, right?
That's
going
right.
forward, right? So, and as you said, you can't play anybody in your own group. So it's kind of like 3 and 4 get matched up with 5 and 6, and then you see who's played who. So I guess France was the 5 or something like that. So, unfortunate that they played the host country. This is a French team they had blown out by 30 a year earlier at the World Cup. Wow. Of course, they didn't have Wemby. Right. And Wemby, as anybody who's watched the NBA knows, is a monster. I mean, he's one of the best players in the world, and he was dominant in that game. For Canada, they didn't have a lot of guys play well in that game. and their lack of size up front really, really hurt them. Jordy Fernandez opted to stay with a small lineup for a lot of the game, which had been a great lineup for them for much of the Olympics and even more so in the World Cup. But I think France exploited that and kept pounding the ball down low to Lasorte and Yabusele. Yabusele now back in the NBA. He's a guy where a lot of people were watching the Olympics and say, I never heard of this guy. How can he be so good? He's good. Like, look at him now, right? He's good. So, and they kind of took advantage of the fact that Canada had a Dylan Brooks or an RJ Barrett playing the 4 and just giving up some size. They got Canada in foul trouble, and it was a parade to the free throw line. So, if Canada plays them, if that team plays that team in a best of 7, even if game 1 had gone like that, I think Canada comes back to win the series. But it's like the NCAA tournament, right? It's one and done.
Yep.
And this is what makes FIBA basketball so incredibly exciting sometimes and so incredibly painful sometimes, depending on who you're rooting for. But even going back to before they had played a game, Matt, like I had all kinds of people say, so like silver at worst and maybe beat the U.S., right? And I wasn't in that camp. I thought Serbia was better, which they are, which they were.
That turned out to be a hell of a semifinal between the Americans. Yeah.
I mean, Serbia had them.
Yeah.
I thought Germany was probably better, reigning World Cup champions, and then I thought Canada might be next, but France and I thought Australia was really good. Like Australia was really good. Look at the talent on that roster. So I thought Canada was somewhere between like 4 and 6, 4 and 7 going in, and then it depends on how you play. Going forward, obviously they need a new coach now. Jordi Fernandez, it sounds like by mutual agreement, no longer the coach. And let's hope they get the core back. I mean, it's got to start with Gilgeous-Alexander and Barrett and Brooks and Dort. And I think we're going to see some new guys. Nembhard should be there too, Mathurin and Shaden Sharp, and that would be great. But those 7 guys I just mentioned, they're all small forwards and down, right? They still need size. Kelly Olynyk barely played in the Olympics. Is he going to be around for the next cycle? They need some bigger players. Zach Edey will be there. I think we know that, and that's great. I think he can help, but I think they need more. And, you can't just snap your fingers and make one unless you're naturalizing citizens like some of the other countries do. But I think they've got a chance again. Like if things go great, they can play with anybody and maybe win a medal and that sort of thing. But the U.S. is going to have an incredible team. The Olympics are in L.A., right? Everybody's going to want to play. Although it's funny, their 3 best players were their 3 oldest players. There's no disputing their 3 best players were LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Stephen Curry. Yeah. I don't know if any of them will be there. Let's hope Canada qualifies the easy way through the World Cup, that they don't have to do the last chance thing, and then you see where what your draw is and how you do. But I think they're in a better place than they were simply because they've now had the experience. The World Cup experience was one thing. I think the Olympic experience was another thing, and they've now had the expectations and not met them. And they've now played the host team, which is, they've now experienced everything. Yep. And I don't think there would ever be any complacency or overlooking anybody going into the next round. Let's just hope all the guys that we need to play.
So you got to go over, you got to check that item off the bucket list, and Paris is obviously one of the great cities of the world. If they asked you, do you want to do it again in LA, or is this sort of one and done for you?
No, it's too early to know, but I'd love to do it again. I mean, it's a little bit complicated with the Blue Jays schedule, right? Because you're just zipping away for 17 days, there's a lot of prep. I came back exhausted too. We did 26 games in 15 days in Paris, men and women. So. But I would love to do it again. I think we're still a year and a half, 2 years away from locking that down. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I would be very interested in looking at it again.
Let's talk a little bit of baseball. The Jays right now sit at 7-5. It was a rough weekend in New York, but a nice start in Boston. Getting that game against Garrett Crochet is a nice feather in your cap that maybe when you looked at that pitching matchup, didn't look like it was going to go your way. I'm sort of curious, since we got the news on Vladdy late Sunday night, has there been any sort of difference you've seen around the team and their attitude and their mindset, or were they always kind of business-like, keeping it in the background?
I think they were always pretty good about keeping it in the background, but I think everybody's glad it's done because it just removes a potential distraction. Like, is Chris Bassett thinking about it when he's on the mound? No, I don't think so. But it's just nice to not have people asking, and especially when you go to Boston, when you go to Philly, when you go to New York, when you go to LA, it's more so the American media, the other team's media, that is just asking about it constantly. So I think everybody's glad it's done. Will it turn out to be a great deal for the Blue Jays? Let's check back in a decade and see about that. But now it's just one less thing that they have to worry about. They're playing pretty well. They didn't play well in New York. They didn't hit it all, but the starting pitching has been excellent. The bullpen has been okay. I think the bullpen's going to need a couple of touch-ups to help get this team, potentially to a postseason. And I like the way they're playing the game offensively. They're just not hitting for power. They're hitting for average. They're making contact. They're executing. They're driving in runners. They're getting guys, getting them over, getting them in. They're playing the game well. They just need to hit a few more balls over the fence. Hopefully that'll come. 12 games in, what kind of odds could you have gotten that neither Bichette, Guerrero, or Santander has hit a home run yet? Like, you'd have made a lot of money on that. So at some point, the big boys are going to be the big boys.
Well, one of the other big contracts that we saw get done a couple of weeks ago ahead of Vladdy was Kirk. And I'm just curious if you can kind of take us a little bit inside why he's such a popular teammate, why pitchers love throwing to him. And, that was an important move. They lock him up for 5 years. It was a little higher number, I think, than a lot of people thought he might get. But, even when his bat's not going, there are things that he brings to the team. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why that was so important to them to keep around?
Yeah. It did surprise me, to be honest with you. I didn't see that one coming. I thought maybe we would hear a Varsho thing, but Varsho's not healthy right now. Yeah. But once he gets back, that wouldn't surprise me. The Kirk one surprised me, and the years and the amount surprised me a little bit. The more I thought about it and compared it to other catchers, it surprised me a little bit less. But Mark Shapiro in the spring spoke in glowing terms about Alehandro Kirk. They believe in the bat, and we haven't seen it yet in the regular season. We saw it in the spring, and we saw it the last 2 months of last year. And, of course, we saw it in 2022 when he won a Silver Slugger and was an all-star. But I think more than that, they love the defensive side. The throwing has improved significantly. The framing or receiving, whatever you want to call it, is elite. And I think the working with the pitcher and taking charge and becoming more of a leader on the field, that has progressed. Blocking pitches is elite. He does a lot of defensive things very well. They've shown a lot of faith in him. I mean, for this kind of a contract, you're saying, we want you to catch 110 to 120 games for the next 5 years. 2 years ago, when they had three catchers, Jansen, Moreno, and Kirk, I would not have thought this is how this would all have played out. I would have had my money on Moreno being this guy. So, but they really like a lot of the subtle things that he does. They believe in him. He spent a lot of the winter around the PDC. He was in Florida a lot and, came in better condition. It looks like he's lost a little bit of weight, and hopefully that, he can maintain or improve that even more, because it's a grueling position, right? It's a very demanding position, and he's going to catch 3 out of 4 games or something like that. I think one of the nice surprises for this team, and one of the reasons why they're off to a pretty good start, is Tyler Heineman has been an excellent backup so far, and they've gotten some nice, not to drift away from your question, but they've gotten some, for a team to exceed expectations, you got to get some good, maybe slightly unexpected outcomes. 2 great starts from Easton Lucas. Yeah. Tyler Heineman has done good things in every game that he's played in. Alan Rodin has not looked overmatched at all. Miles Straw has had some good moments in the games that he's played. Like, some of the peripheral players are really doing some good things for this team and becoming less of a peripheral player as a result. So I think there's some encouraging signs around the edges of the roster.
The evolution of Kirk has been so fascinating, right? I remember when they called him up in 2020 at the very end of the season going into the playoffs because they were so desperate for offense that let's get this 20-year-old catcher up here who's never played major league games before. And he was supposed to be a bat-first kind of catcher. And obviously, ever since his all-star appearance, there's been some concern about the bat. And all of a sudden, the defense has emerged as this elite thing that you talk to more people than I do. I don't think anybody saw that coming, that this would be the type of player and the reason he was getting the contract he was getting.
Right. And you're right. It's probably, where he separates himself right now from the average catcher is probably, 80% of that is coming on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm with you as well. And I give him a lot of credit. Like, it's obviously hard work. How else do you get better at something without coaching and hard work? And he's he doesn't, quote, look the part of being a terrific athlete, but I think in terms of his hand-eye coordination, again, the blocking pitches, the receiving balls, he's elite at those things. He's got a very good feel of it. And I think I wouldn't be certain. In fact, I'm quite certain that, the front office has gotten all kinds of feedback from the Bassetts and Gosmans and Barrioses of the world. Like, we love this guy. Right. We love throwing to this guy. And that ultimately, that's the most important job a catcher has, is to make a pitcher comfortable. So I think this has been building, and I think they probably started to see it after Danny Jansen was dealt last year, because Kirk did get the lion's share of the job the last 2 months of last year. Mm-hmm. And played well. And so I think they had a nice 2-month audition about how they would feel about him.
And you never know, right? Word gets around. Maybe there's a pitcher got a same offer between two teams, and one you get to throw to Kirk. Maybe he's going to help you a little bit. You never know, right? Might give you a little edge there too down the road. So
yeah, you never know. The pitching coach helps too, right?
Sure.
And Pete Walker's got a good reputation around the sport as well.
So I was trying to keep my expectations very realistic about Max Scherzer, but I was excited to see that he was signing here. And I knew we weren't getting, what we once were getting, but just to see that guy put on a Blue Jays uniform and be around spring training and be a part of the rotation in some way or another, even if it's a nice number 4 or something like that. Obviously, it didn't get too far into the experiment. It almost... you try not to be too negative about it now, but it's starting to feel a little like the Joey Votto thing a year ago, which I was also quite excited about. What can you tell us about Scherzer? I know he's got the cortisone shot. How soon do you think we might see him back?
I don't think we know. I talked to him 2 days ago about it, and he's still got what he called lingering tightness in the thumb. He says not from the original injury, from the cortisone shot, because I've never had a cortisone shot, but I guess it takes a few days for it to kind of run its course through your system. And he threw again yesterday, but I think he spoke with Hazel yesterday, I believe, and kind of reported the same thing. And listen, he's 40 years old, and he's been oft injured the last couple of years, so there was always a risk here. Yeah. Hopefully, this is something he can come back from fairly soon, because as we saw in limited bursts in the spring, he can still pitch. He can still get guys out. So again, they've been very fortunate that Easton Lucas has stepped in and had the 2 starts that he's had, and maybe that can continue. But I'm really hopeful that Scherzer can come back, because maybe somebody else goes down, right? Sure. You need another guy. You always need more people. And even if it's 20 to 25 starts, 5 innings, piece it together. Those are valuable innings, because I think he can be a good pitcher. But in terms of the prognosis, I would just be, throwing darts at a dartboard. Even since the cortisone shot, Scherzer told me a couple of days ago, this is taking longer than he expected. He's frustrated. He's impatient by nature. Sure. He does, he's new here. He doesn't have 5 years left in his career, probably. He wants to get out there and pitch. So I'm hoping he's back fairly soon. But at this point, I would think they'd have to build him back up in a minor league start or two. Like, I don't think he's going to be on a major league mound in the next couple of weeks. I think it's going to be, at best, longer than that.
Okay. Last thing for you, I want to talk to you just briefly about Bo Bichette. And, now that, sports fans by nature are impatient, much like Max Scherzer, what's next? What are we doing? We're never satisfied. So now that Vladdy's done, attention turns to Bo. And it was going to be, I think everyone understands, very difficult over the last offseason to get anything done with him, knowing the highs that he's had and then the injuries that have sort of hurt his numbers here recently. He was going to have to go out and show it over the course of another full season before he was going to be able to get the number that he wanted from any team, let alone the Blue Jays. And early on, he is looking like he's going to show it. He's had some bad luck, but even some of that is hard hit balls being caught or hitting high up on the monster that would have gone out somewhere else. What have you seen out of Bo thus far, and are you expecting, it's hard to read anything into the first week and a half of a season, but him to have, a big bounce back year?
Yeah, I think he's looked great. And I know he hasn't hit a home run, but he's hitting the ball hard a lot. And I kind of love line drive Bo and let the home runs come where they may. I'm not so concerned if Bo hits 17 home runs or 24 home runs.
Right.
I just want to see rockets. And I've always thought of Bo, I always think there's this season in Bo where he's going to hit like 48 doubles because he just hits rockets all over the field, and enough of them will go to right center, left center, down the right field line, whatever. My favorite Bo Bichette is like hitting over 300 with a ton of doubles, Bo Bichette.
Sure.
So I think he's in a really good place. I mean, here in Boston, 2 nights ago, you'll remember Cedar Rafaela absolutely robbed him on the first pitch of the game, I think it was. That would have been a double, maybe a triple. Then he had a double later. You mentioned the single off the wall. He had 2 other singles, drove in 3 runs last night. I think he's in a good place. And I think he'll have a good year. Does that mean 270 with 24 homers or 310 with 16 homers? I don't know. But I think he'll have a really good year. Big picture, long-term contract extension, I wouldn't even hazard a guess on that. I mean, Bo has a lot of belief in himself. It's the way he's wired, and he should. Mm-hmm. And, he has said nothing is imminent. There's nothing on the table. You've heard the quotes. I'd love to win a championship with Vladdy, et cetera, et cetera. So if he doesn't have a good year, then I don't think there's any chance of an extension. If he does have a good year, I think the team might be interested, but would he be interested, right, or would he be motivated to say, let me go see what's on the market? I can always come back, but let me go see what's on the market. So we'll find out. The other piece of the puzzle that I think should be mentioned is, and I know he committed an error last night, but he's played some of the best defense of his career, I think, in the first 2 weeks of the season. So I think that's part of it as well. If they're going to commit, are they committing to him as a shortstop long term? That's also part of it.
Yeah, there was a lot of conversation there after the trade for Jimenez that maybe he was sort of Bo insurance or whatever. So that question does remain to be answered. Just quickly, one name this year, the rest of the way, you think we should keep an eye on, whether he's already been called up that we don't know a lot about, or someone you would expect to see this season. One guy you think that is maybe being under-discussed, but you think could be interesting.
Well, he's not under discussed, but I love Alehandro. I think he's a winning player. I think the base running, the defense, the quality of the at-bats, the maturity, the poise, whatever you want to say, all those things that we heard about, and you heard people like me drone on and on about in the spring because I can drone, but he's got it. And I think he's a good player. And when Dalton Varsho comes back, somebody's got to go, and I don't think it's going to be Alan Roden. I think they have, they've played him like 5 times a week. They gave him a start against a tough lefty in Crochet. I think they like what they're seeing, and I think he's going to be on this team. This is not another guy who's been under-discussed, but I love Jeff Hoffman at the end of this bullpen.
Right.
I think he's great, and I think he has really solidified things. Down on the farm, I don't know. Like, will Barger get a look? Everybody knows the name of Orelvis Martinez. I do think they may have something to consider. Davis Schneider is not off to a good start, and I root for Davis Schneider a ton. And he's had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows in a relatively brief major league career. I really want to see him find it and be that right-handed power bat off the bench, start against lefties. If it doesn't work out at some point, obviously they're going to contemplate a change. I don't know who that right-handed bat is at AAA. Could it be Orelvis? Maybe. He doesn't give them any help in the outfield. Schneider can be like a backup left fielder, right, as well. Orelvis is a second base, third base guy. I think that's something they're going to have to think about. Do they need a right-handed bat, a platoon guy, a pinch hit guy? It's not number one on their list, but I think it can be an important spot for this team. So, Jonathan Clase, last I looked, was off to a nice start, a switch-hitting outfielder. Maybe he gets some consideration. But I think the team is off to a pretty good start, all things considered. 7-5's pretty good. And as we all know, it's been a tough schedule so far. And it's not going to ease up anytime soon. But I think they're going to, have to be a couple more moves around the edges of this roster for them to maintain this pace.
Dan Shulman, you're playing hurt. You're a busy man. The weather's been crap. I know I always appreciate you making the time. No doubt I'll come knocking again later in the summer, but for now, keep that window closed, and thanks for doing this.
I will, definitely. Thanks, Matt. Be well.
There he goes, Dan Shulman. What a trooper. He told me before we started up there that he was battling something, had a bit of a cough, and he does a lot of talking, obviously, right? Over 3 hours every night. It's been cold down in Boston. For him to make a little time, come in and battle through with the voice there. Great guy, great friend of the show. Always appreciate his time. That's going to be it for today. We'll keep it nice and tight. I'm going to go and check Twitter, see if anybody is yet thanking Brendan Gallagher, but my hopes are not high. I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to troll Sens fans. If it's Leafs and Sens in the first round of the playoffs, that becomes dangerous for me. I'm not sure how much of that I'll want to engage in. We'll see. We'll probably be back later in the week with a little something else. We'll see what breaks. We see what's in the news, what's going on, if there's a reason to put out another one. Otherwise, we'll see you on Monday with Rob, always back on the show. And we got a couple interesting things lined up in the weeks to come as well. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you're hearing us right now, and follow along on social media. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Matt Robinson. We'll catch you later.
I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that. But for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.